to another video on my channel. Today we're going to be looking at a little track guide driving the MX5 Cup on the Iracing Global MX5 Cup. It's the default setup championship. This is Jefferson reverse, so I wanted to just do a quick track guide for it because I think I set an okay time when I went into time trial after did a few runs. We had a race very early in the week, hadn't played it for 5 days, came back, did a time trial and then did a race. After doing this time trial, we dominated the race and set a reasonably fast lap time in the race as well. We should have actually hit 2 temps faster than this in the race, but we messed up the last corner, which lost us quite a bit. But it was good to see that it translated the same. It should do anyway, because obviously time trial doesn't have any difference in the weather. Everything's static, you can't change setup, you've got the set fuel levels. So I just wanted to give you guys a very quick track guide for how I achieved this time, and basically just some turning in reference points and stuff that I could have done better probably, and stuff which show you where the mistakes are made. But overall it was an okay lap that got us a reasonable time. As you can see, you know, it was a 54.2, so the lap time is okay. So we're going to do it like this for this track guide, going through the replay mode and slowing it down. So obviously we didn't get the best exit from the last corner. That's one thing we could have done better, but it didn't really make much difference because on this track the start line is basically at the end of the straight. So first thing you want to do is aim to get your car over to that left hand. Where we're pointing that arrow, there's a bit of tarmac from the pit exit which you can use to widen your line into turn 1. It's quite important to do that and just widen the angle. So we get the car over, it's kind of just swinging that car over and you get the momentum through the corner and you get that very slight drift going into the corner. One thing we did do is we actually turned in a slight bit too early, not much but a little bit too early. You can see our right front tyre is heading to go a bit too much on that curb, but one thing, there is a lot of grip on that inside line due to the way the corner is. If you run too far wide, the camber will take you off. So you know, if you can get that car into that corner nice and early, you can see how we're trail braking as well. Pay attention to the brake pedal, trail braking all the way through the corner to keep that weight shifted to the front end. And then once we've got the car there where we coast slightly and then start building the power up to maximum throttle. You can see now we're going to start putting little dabs of opposite locking just to keep the rear from not sliding too much. We don't want to drift that car out too much, otherwise it's going to slow the car down when we're coming out the corner. So you can see the line we took through that corner is very tight through that corner. There is a lot of grip on the inside line for this first corner, so it's very important to try and stay on that part of the track. You can see how it's a little bit darker anyway, so that's where the grip is for that corner. If you run too far wide, you can gain a bit on the exit, but I just found that taking that tight line gained me quite a bit. It was about, I think we were over a tenth up on our previous lap when we did that tight line. But you do gain a bit back down the straight. So next up, we're going to look to straighten the car up now, and you're going to see the apex of that corner there. It's not really a corner, but just there, you want to aim to get your left-hand tyre there. So you're trying to straighten the car up now and get the car there just to take a shorter line through the track as possible. So you see there, skimming the apex. And then we're going to be looking for our next braking zone, which was a shadow. You're going to look for the shadow of the tree on the track there, just up ahead, the shadow. We're going to brake a little bit before that, so we're going to play it in slow motion now and pay attention to the brake marker. So you're going to see when the braking kicks in now. So we're going to go back to the slow motion, taking it through now. You want to make sure your car is also to the most left-hand point of the track here. So braking just before there, you can see again we're going to trail brake. So let's rewind that slightly and just have a little look at the exact point we hit that brake. So we're going to wait for it to kick in. So it's slightly, you can see there the tree, and we're going to go back a very slight bit more there. So you can see the brake started to kick in just there. So we're pumping the brake to pretty much maximum to start with, and then we're going to lift off and trail brake through the corner to keep that weight pointing to the ground. You want the weight of the car to be on the front tyres. And then once you've got the grip there, just let go a bit. So you can see still trail braking slightly then, and then lifting, and then we can feel the grips there. So we're slowly putting the accelerator in. Very tricky corner. We should have really maybe lifted off a little bit more without putting the throttle on, or put the throttle on a little bit earlier, because we kind of took a slight early line. You're going to see we kind of hit the curb slightly a bit too hard here. If we would have come slightly wider, we would have gained a little bit more over the lap. But one advantage again is it's a lot of grip on that inside line. So you can see we hit that the apex quite hard there and unsettled the car very slightly, but we got away with it and got on the power really nicely coming out the corner. So again, you want to make sure you use all the track on the left hand side now. So looking over to the left hand side, you know, a lot of people say they take similar lines to people, but they're slower. One thing is you've got to use every inch of the track. So we're going to change the camera and have a look in a minute after we've used all the track. So they're using all the track on the exit is really keen to making sure you're carrying as much speed as possible coming out the corner. So you can see they're leaving no track spare basically on the exit of that corner there. And then we're going to head our way into this quite a tricky right-hander that comes up next. There's a couple of different lines you can take for this corner. I tended to prefer taking it tighter and then widening the apex for the last part of the corner, which we'll go through in a minute and show you how I did that. So we're going to play it again, going into the next point now where we're going to start braking. So we're going to pause it now and show you. So we're right on the left-hand point of the track. You want to make sure you're as far left as you physically can go, and then we're going to look to hit the apex of the first part of the corner now. So playing it in slow motion, you're going to see now that obviously the apex is going to come up, and we're slowly turning in at this point now, and we're going to aim just to skim that right hand tyre on that apex of that corner. That's where we want to aim for the first part of the corner. This is how I took this corner. There are other ways to take this corner, and we're in fourth gear at this point, starting to coast it now through the corner. You can see we're trail braking very slightly just to keep that grip on the front, and you're going to just show you what I mean by keeping that right hand tyre as close to that apex as possible. So we're going to go to the chase, and you can see the line is pretty much perfect for how I like to take the corner, nice and tight and on the first part of the apex. And then obviously we're going to start coasting the car slightly, you know, letting the rear end slip out slightly with the brake pressure still trail braking into the corner. So in fourth gear, we're going to start thinking about shifting down to third gear at that point. So down to third gear, still slowly, just a very slight amount of brake pressure just to keep a bit of pressure on the front, and then lifting off totally to let it coast, and then a slight dab of brake again just to get it to turn into the corner. So for this first part of this apex, you can see how we took a very tight line to this corner. You can take it much further out there where I'm pointing the arrow and then cut in a lot more, so you lose a bit on the first part but you gain a bit on the second part that way. But I tended to prefer to just take it nice and tight, take a safer line through. And for the first part of this apex, you don't really want to be hitting that right hand tyre on that curb. You want to be a bit wide of that because it's a double apex slightly. So for that part, you're going to just think about missing it. Varies not by much, but I see how we've left a bit of tarmac on the right hand side just so that we can straighten the car up a little bit more coming out of the exit. So again, let's just have a little look in the cockpit view, and we'll let it play in slow motion again. So we're slowly putting that steering. We're not putting maximum steering angle at this point because we don't want to scrub too much speed off. And then we're going to look to try and hit that part of the apex. So there, the second part of the apex. That is the point where we want to straighten the car up and hit perfectly on the right hand tyre. So again, we'll have a little look from the chase camera, and I'll show you now. So you can see how now we're hitting that part of the apex perfectly to line it up to basically get the car over to the middle of the track for this left hand. It's a real tricky part of the track, this, and one that builds a lot of heat up in your tyres, so you really need to be smooth and get your lines right through this part of the track. It's quite key to your lap. If you go in too deep into this corner by taking too much speed through this part of the track, you're going to be too far over to the left. So you can see how we've got the car lined up basically in the middle of the track here, and then we're going to use the white line in the middle of the track as kind of a reference, because you want to get your right hand tyre on the left hand part of that track, going on the left hand part of the line, going into the left hander. So again, we'll let it play now and show you what I mean by that. So we're going over to the right hand side now, and then we're slowly turning. Now the right hand tyre is just on the left hand side of that white line, and we're going to try and hit the apex of this corner now. You can be quite aggressive on this curb, but just be careful not to be too aggressive because it can unsettle the car, because as soon as you're through this corner, you've got to be thinking about straight lining it as straight as possible for the next right hander. You can see there we're pretty much dead on the curb. Not too, you can probably take a bit more, but I would have probably preferred to be slightly off the curb, ever so slightly, a bit more, maybe a few inches away. But you know, it's not the easiest thing to do when you're talking by, you know, centimeters and inches. But we've lined the car up reasonably well at this point. This is why another point why the lap was actually quite good, because now we can straight line these corners as much as possible. So you can see we're straightening the steering wheel up, and we're then attacking this corner in quite a straight line. So we just got to try and skim the right hand tyre onto this part of the curb again. So you can see there we're getting the car to straighten it up as much as possible, and we're going to play it through in slow motion. So we attack that curb. Be careful not to take too much off of that though, because you will get a corner cut. So you can see we are basically running as close as you physically can to getting a corner cut at that point there. But you know, we got away with it, and then we're going into the left hand part now. This is very tricky because of the line. You have to take quite a straight line, straighten them corners off. You've got to get the car into this corner nicely. You can take a wide line, but the camber drifts off to the right, so if you go wide, you run the risk of running wide. So I tended to prefer get the car to the middle of the track and then take quite a not too tight a line, but reasonably tight line. One thing you don't want to do is get up on that curb, because it's going to then unsettle the car, and that's one thing you really don't want to do. Is if you're unsettling the car going into a long straight, you're going to lose a lot of momentum down that straight. So bear that in mind. You know, I leave a couple of feet before the apex because I don't want to be getting too close, and we want to widen our line so we get a nice clean exit from the corner. So we'll have a little look at from the chase camera in a minute, so we'll just play it through a little bit more there. So you can see we're starting to feed off the steering wheel just to straighten the car up so we can build maximum speed coming out the corner. So we'll have a little look from the chase camera again. So you can see we had a good few feet away from that apex. We were never dead on the apex, because you're going to lose a bit of time if you try and take that too close to it. You can probably run a little bit closer and it might be slightly faster, but in terms of consistency and making sure you get a clean exit, I do like to leave a couple of feet away from that apex. So you can see there we're feeding the steering angle off now and getting on the power for maximum acceleration. One thing to bear in mind when you're coming out of this corner is a gear change from second to third. It can be quite tricky. I did do a few misshifts on my first ever try, but obviously once I got used to it, it was fairly simple. And then basically from then onwards, it's just a case of accelerating all the way down the straight and over the line. And you can see we go over the line for a reasonably good lap of 54.2. Remember, this is just the baseline setup, so that the conditions are static. There's no really fast track. It's just the set time trial settings. And it was an okay run. We actually set, I think on the time trial leaderboard, we're second in the world for the time trial we set on this. Not everyone does a time trial though, I know that, but we're very close to getting the top time as well. You can see there for the laps, there was a couple of errors in the middle. There was one lap that really had a big error in. We ran a little bit wide on that last corner, which I was talking about. The camera drifted us off and we lost a good 3 or 4 attempts. We really should have been on a 48.8 at 54.8 at that point, and it would have put our average. Our average was a 54.8, which is okay for 8 laps average. I do like the way they do the time trials in Iracing. It's much better than other games. You have to be consistent and keep that consistency. You can see there 54.8 average with the best lap of a 54.2, which I've just done from that guide. We did go into a race after doing this and we won fairly easy. I think it was by 14 seconds we run, and it's put us to 8th in the championship now, going into the last few weeks. So it's interesting, since we've got this shifter going, we are working our way up that table, and hopefully if we do this next season, I won't put as much effort into it because hopefully I'll be doing other series, but hopefully we can fight for another top 10 place, top 5 place in the championship on the next season. Anyway guys, I'm going to leave you with the video from the TV replay cameras. Hope this video has helped you out. If there's anything you might have that's helped you out, please let me know. If there's anything you want to know, please write in the comments. Anything that you want, I'll try to answer as many questions as possible, and hopefully I'll be back with more of these. If you want to see more of these, make sure you click that like button and subscribe, and I'll get more of these out as and when I can do them. Thanks again for watching, guys.